One morning, Percy was taking on water at the sheds near Knapford. He then noticed the Fat Controller's car coming towards him, but was surprised to see Lady Hat. "Hello, Percy," she said. "I'm afraid Topham has taken ill and lost his voice." Percy looked concerned. "I hope he gets better soon, Mum. But he did give me a list of jobs that needed to be done," Lady Hat continued. She took out a note from her purse and began to read. "First, Gordon is to pull coaches of fine china to the docks. He must go slowly as to not damage them. Then, James is to take trucks of coal up the line. It's an urgent load, so he must be as busy as a bee. Finally, Toby is to take holidaymakers to Callan Castle, but he must be as fast as Gordon's express." Percy was confused. It was a lot for him to remember. "Perhaps we should take the note for safekeeping," said Percy's driver, and took the note from Lady Hat. "You're in charge now, Percy," said Lady Hat. "Now, I must be off to the Ladies' Guild." And with that, she drove away. Percy was excited. "Imagine that," he thought. "I'm in charge. I guess they should call me the Green Controller." Then there was trouble. The note slipped out of the driver's breast pocket, fluttered down, and landed in a puddle. "Crumbs!" exclaimed the driver, and fished out the note. The ink had smudged out some of the words. "How can I remember the jobs now?" peeped Percy. "Don't worry, Percy," said the driver. "We'll figure something out." A little while later, Percy saw Gordon puffing up to take on coal. He then noticed old Slowcoach waiting in the siding. "Driver," said Percy, "what does the note say Gordon had to do?" The driver looked at the note. The only words he could read out were Gordon, Coach, Docks, and Slow. Percy thought for a moment, then went to see old Slowcoach. "Hello," said Percy. "What are you doing here?" "I'm waiting to be pulled to the works to be repainted," said old Slowcoach. Percy thought for a moment. "Of course," he exclaimed, and went to see Gordon. "The Fat Controller is ill and has put me in charge," he told the big engine. "He needs you to pull old Slowcoach to the docks." Gordon was puzzled as he puffed away to fetch old Slowcoach. Next, Percy went to look for James. As he did, he passed the vicarage orchard. The vicar was holding his annual fete. "What did the note say about James?" Percy asked his driver. The driver looked at the note. The only words he could make out were James, busy, and bee. Percy then remembered that the vicar kept bees that made good honey. "That's it," he said, and went to find James. James was resting in a siding when Percy pulled up. "The Fat Controller has put me in charge," Percy said, "and he needs you to be busy at the vicar's fete as a bee." James gasped. "Do you mean I have to be painted yellow and black?" he asked. "Yes," said Percy. "Fat Controller's orders." James, lost for words, watched as Percy puffed away. Percy then went to look for Toby. "What does the note say about Toby?" he asked his driver. The driver checked the note. The only words he could make out were Toby, holidaymakers, Callan, and express. "Right," said Percy. He then found Toby near Knapford. "The Fat Controller's put me in charge," Percy explained, "and he needs you to take holidaymakers to Callan Castle in Gordon's express coaches." Toby was concerned. "I'm not sure if I can pull those heavy coaches myself," he said. "Don't worry," peeped Percy. "You can do it." After assigning all the jobs, Percy went to have a rest. But he then noticed crates of fine china on the platform and a line of coal trucks in the siding. Suddenly, everything came back to Percy. "Bubbling boilers!" he squeaked. "Everyone's been given the wrong jobs. Gordon was supposed to take the china to the docks, James was supposed to take the coal trucks up the line, and Toby will be late with the holiday makers." He felt very silly. "Come on then, Percy," said his driver. "We must put everything to rights." Percy then collected the crates of china and the coal trucks and hurried off to deliver them. Meanwhile, Gordon was feeling very awkward. Old Slowcoach didn't seem to mind. She liked being by the sea. Just then, Percy pulled up with the fine china. "I'm sorry, Gordon," said Percy. "I made a mistake. You were meant to pull these coaches of china slowly to the docks, not Old Slowcoach." Gordon was relieved. "Now that makes more sense." "It's been fun being by the sea," said Old Slowcoach, "but someone really should take me to the works now. They're surely waiting for me." "No worries," said Gordon. "I'll take you." And he puffed away. Percy then hurried up the line with the coal trucks. He passed the vicarage orchard, where James sat looking very silly, painted like a bee. "Percy!" shouted James angrily. "No one knows who I am painted like this." "I'm sorry, James," said Percy. "You were meant to be a busy bee pulling these coal trucks up the line." "Well," sniffed James, "at least I don't have to pull trucks if I'm stuck here. Off you go then." Percy huffed away. At last, Percy delivered the trucks. He then saw Toby pulling the express coaches full of holiday makers. He looked very worn out. "These coaches are far too heavy," puffed Toby, who was all out of breath. "I've made a mistake," said Percy. "You were meant to take those holiday makers quickly like Gordon's express, not actually pull his coaches. But don't worry, I'll lend a wheel." And together, the little engines puffed as hard as they could all the way to Callan Castle. At the end of the day, the Fat Controller came to see Percy. "Well, Percy," he said, his voice still a little hoarse, "even though there were some mishaps today, I'm glad you were able to sort it all out." "Thank you, sir," said Percy, "and I'm glad you're all better now. I never want to be the Green Controller ever again." And they both had a good laugh.